The quarterly shareholders meeting at Thompson Manufacturing always took place in the same pristine conference room on the 15th floor. Same polished mahogany table, same leather chairs, same view over the industrial district where Dad had built his empire over 3 decades. And always the same seating order. The board members around the table, Dad presiding at the head as CEO, and me tucked into a corner chair with my laptop, recording the minutes. Officially, I was the administrative assistant, a title I'd carried for 6 years since graduating from Stanford with my MBA. Dad had insisted I learn the business from the bottom up before taking on any real operational role. Apparently, learning from the ground up meant sitting quietly and typing notes while others debated critical decisions. Today's meeting carried extra weight. Thompson Manufacturing faced the most significant choice in decades: whether to accept a buyout offer from Meridian Industrial, a vast conglomerate that had been acquiring smaller manufacturing firms across the Midwest. "The offer is substantial," announced Robert Chin, the board chairman and Dad's oldest business partner. "Meridian proposes $450 million for a full acquisition." Patricia Williams, a board member, leaned forward. "That's nearly triple our current valuation. Numbers like that are hard to ignore." James Peterson, Dad's golfing companion and a board veteran of 15 years, nodded eagerly. "We'd all walk away extremely wealthy." Dad, however, remained unconvinced. At 62, Thomas Thompson was still a formidable presence, the same man who had transformed a single machine shop into a major regional manufacturer. His thick gray hair was immaculately styled, his navy suit flawless, and his gaze sharp with skepticism. "Meridian has a reputation for gutting the companies they acquire," he said firmly. "They'll keep the contracts and machinery, but jobs will vanish. Half our workforce could be gone within a year." "That's business, Tom," Peterson replied. "We can't run a company based on sentiment." "It's not sentiment," Dad countered. "It's strategy. We've built something sustainable here." Thompson Manufacturing has been profitable for 28 straight years because we prioritize quality and take care of our people. I kept typing, documenting every exchange, remaining unseen in my corner. This was familiar territory. Dad's principled stance against corporate raiders, the board's temptation to cash out, the tension between legacy and profit. What they didn't know was that I'd been quietly studying Meridian Industrial for months. Not officially, of course. No one expected the administrative assistant to perform strategic analysis, but I had scrutinized their acquisition history, financial statements, and post-merger outcomes. Dad was right. Meridian usually cut 30 to 40% of the workforce within 18 months while extracting maximum short-term gains. "The question," Robert Chin continued, "is whether we want to remain a family business with limited growth potential or seize this opportunity to maximize shareholder value." Dad's jaw tightened. "Limited growth potential? We've increased our market share by 12% over the last 2 years. Regional market share," Williams corrected gently. "Meridian offers national distribution, international contracts, and economies of scale we could never achieve alone," Chin said, "but it comes at the cost of independence and employees' jobs." Peterson spread his hands diplomatically. "Tom, I understand the emotional attachment. You built this company. But we have a fiduciary duty to shareholders. $450 million is more than most of us ever imagined." Then Dad made the remark that would alter everything. He rose, commanding the room with the authority that had fueled his success for 3 decades. His voice carried unshakable certainty. "Gentlemen," he began, pausing to glance at Williams, "and lady, this decision demands rigorous business analysis, not emotional reactions to dollar signs. We need to think like experienced executives, not amateur investors." The room went silent. "Some of you may be tempted by Meridian's offer because it looks like easy money, but real business decisions require understanding market dynamics, competitive positioning, and long-term value creation." His gaze swept the room with confidence before landing directly on me, quietly typing in the corner. Then came the words that would shatter his control over the company he'd spent 30 years building. "Leave business to the men," he declared. "Women don't understand manufacturing." A few board members chuckled, a mix of nervous agreement and habitual deference to Dad's authority. Even Williams, the only other woman present, forced a polite smile, carefully choosing her battles. I stayed silent, fingers poised over the keyboard. The meeting moved on: financial reports, operational updates, preliminary voting procedures. Dad outlined his vision for continued independence, highlighting employee loyalty, community ties, and sustainable growth. It was compelling, delivered with the expertise and passion that had defined his career. The board listened respectfully, asked questions, and seemed torn between sentiment and profit. What none of them realized was that Dad had just made the costliest comment of his career. 2 hours later, the formal meeting concluded. Board members trickled out, chatting about dinner plans and golf schedules. Dad gathered his papers, still confident he could persuade them that independence was best. That's when Robert Chin approached my corner, where I was closing my laptop and sorting my notes. "Miss Thompson," he said quietly, "may I speak with you for a moment?" I looked up, expecting a routine question about meeting minutes or scheduling. "Of course, Mr. Chin." The remaining board members paused, sensing something unusual. Dad glanced over with mild curiosity, wondering what administrative detail required attention. Chin's next words changed everything. As majority owner of Thompson Manufacturing, he said clearly, "What are your instructions regarding the Meridian Industrial Acquisition proposal?" Silence engulfed the room. Dad's expression didn't merely freeze, it shattered. "Majority owner," he repeated, stunned. I closed my laptop and stood, meeting Chin's eyes directly. "I'd like to schedule a special board meeting to discuss strategic alternatives. Meridian's offer deserves serious consideration, but we should explore all options before making a final decision." Peterson looked back and forth between me and Dad, as if watching an invisible tennis match. "I'm sorry, what's happening here?" He'd never worried about holding the majority stake. The remaining shares were scattered among dozens of minor investors, none holding more than 3 or 4%. Dad controlled the board, managed day-to-day operations, and made every strategic call. Having majority ownership had always felt unnecessary. What he hadn't foreseen was someone quietly buying up those fragmented minority stakes. I'd begun 6 years ago, right after joining the company. My first acquisition was a 2% share from Mr. Anderson, a retiree who had invested early and wanted cash for his grandchildren's college tuition. Then I bought 3% from the Peterson Family Trust when James needed money for his son's medical bills. Another 1% came from former employee Sarah Martinez when she launched her own business. Small transactions, spaced over years, executed through a private investment entity I had set up. Each one was too minor to require disclosure or raise suspicion. Every seller was glad to cash out from a regional manufacturing firm they barely understood. By my 3rd year at Thompson Manufacturing, I owned 19%. By the 5th year, that number rose to 42%. And last month, I acquired the final 9% from 3 separate estate sales, pushing my stake to 51%. Majority control of the company, where I had worked quietly as an administrative assistant, taking notes, staying silent in board meetings, was now mine. "All share purchases are properly documented and filed," I continued, addressing the board's stunned members. "I have been the majority owner for about 6 weeks. Dad stared at the papers as if they might magically rearrange themselves into something that made sense. "Catherine, where did you get the money for this?" A valid question. Gaining 51% of a company valued at $150 million required significant capital, about $77 million over 6 years. I started with the trust fund Grandpa Thompson had set up for me. I received $22 million at 25, invested it carefully for growth, and used the returns to finance additional acquisitions. Grandpa Thompson had been a successful real estate developer who passed when I was 15. His trust was substantial, yet everyone assumed I'd spend it on personal matters rather than business ventures. The returns alone covered the share purchases, I explained, supplemented by some bank leverage against Thompson Manufacturing equity. What I didn't mention was the exceptional success of my investments. From Grandpa's $22 million, I'd grown a portfolio exceeding $200 million, with Thompson Manufacturing comprising roughly 40% of my holdings. I had learned from top minds in business, Stanford professors, mentors, and 6 years of absorbing boardroom discussions about strategy. Before even stepping onto the factory floor, I understood market trends, competition, and long-term value creation. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Dad lectured that women didn't understand manufacturing, I had been quietly taking control of his life's work. Peterson spoke first. So, when we vote on the Meridian acquisition, my 51% constitutes majority control, I confirmed. The final decision is mine. Williams examined the share certificates with keen interest. Remarkable strategic planning. How long have you been working toward majority ownership? I shook my head slightly. That wasn't the original goal. I invested because I believed in the company's long-term potential. The majority stake became a natural outcome of steady acquisitions over time. Dad was still processing, cycling through emotions I hadn't seen before. Catherine, why didn't you tell me? I weighed the question carefully. When would have been the right time? During family dinners when he insisted I learn the business from the ground up? During board meetings when he stressed keeping family decisions within certain hierarchies? Or today, when he claimed women couldn't understand manufacturing? The board members exchanged glances, recalculating everything they thought they knew about the company's hierarchy. Chin cleared his throat. Perhaps we should schedule a special session to review the Meridian proposal, considering this new information. Agreed, I said. I'd also like to revisit our strategic plan, market positioning, and growth opportunities. There may be alternatives to acquisition we haven't fully explored. Dad gathered his papers with mechanical movements, his mind clearly elsewhere. Catherine, we need to speak privately, of course. But first, we should ensure everyone understands the current situation. I scanned the table. Faces range from shock to calculation to genuine curiosity. I don't intend to make drastic changes to operations. Dad has built something remarkable, and I respect both his expertise and vision. But going forward, strategic decisions will be collaborative, incorporating perspectives previously overlooked. William smiled, the first genuine expression all afternoon. I returned the smile. The meeting ended, with a follow-up session planned for the following week. Board members left in clusters, their discussions urgent and speculative. Chin lingered for administrative matters, and finally, Dad and I were alone in the room where I had spent 6 years taking notes silently. Majority owner, he said, testing the words. 51%. I nodded. And you never mentioned it because I looked out at the factory floor below, where 237 employees worked under my oversight. Every time I tried to contribute to strategic discussions, I said, I was reminded my role was administrative support, not leadership. Dad followed my gaze. I was protecting you. This industry is brutal. I wanted you to grasp its challenges before taking real responsibility. Williams went pale. Robert, what do you mean, majority owner? Chin opened his briefcase and produced a folder of documents. Ladies and gentlemen, there appears to have been some confusion about the company's ownership structure. Miss Catherine Thompson currently holds 51% of Thompson Manufacturing shares. Dad's voice emerged as a whisper. That's impossible. Actually, it's well documented, Chin replied, distributing copies of share certificates and transfer papers. The majority stake had been quietly accumulated over 6 years through careful, strategic purchases. I watched Dad scan the documents, his expression shifting from confusion to disbelief, then comprehension. Each page confirmed Chin's explanation. I controlled Thompson Manufacturing. How did an administrative assistant acquire 51% of a major manufacturing company without anyone noticing? The board must have wondered. The truth was both simpler and more intricate than it seemed. It began in my senior year at Stanford when I wrote my MBA thesis on family business succession planning. I focused on companies where ownership and management had slowly diverged, often without founders realizing it. Thompson Manufacturing had been my case study. Over 30 years, as Dad issued new shares to raise capital and fund expansion, his ownership had gradually diluted from 100% to roughly 35%. Meanwhile, through careful acquisitions over 6 years, I had quietly secured majority control. Dad had built the empire, but the control had quietly shifted right under his nose. If you enjoyed this story and want more dramatic tales of corporate intrigue, betrayal, and unexpected twists, don't forget to subscribe to my channel for the latest updates. I've studied them for 6 years, I replied. Market analysis, competitive intelligence, operational efficiency, workforce management. By listening, asking precise questions, and conducting independent research, I gained firsthand experience in investment, capital allocation, and business growth. Dad was silent for a long moment, processing implications beyond mere corporate control. $200 million portfolio at 31, starting with $22 million at 28. It's been a learning experience, I added. He laughed, half admiration, half disbelief. You sat in meetings while I explained basic business concepts and controlled my company. I learned from you while building complementary skills you never realized I had, I said. Dad shook his head. What happens now? It's simple. We work together. You bring operational expertise. I bring strategic resources. Meridian's offer is just one option, not the only one. What other options? He asked. I opened my laptop, revealing a presentation I'd been preparing for months. Regional expansion, international partnerships, vertical integration. Thompson Manufacturing is poised for growth, but it requires capital and vision. Dad glanced at the first slide, then back at me. You've been planning this? Yes. Today created the opportunity to share it, I said. For the next 2 hours, I walked him through a comprehensive growth strategy that could double revenue in 5 years while preserving workforce stability and quality standards. Ambitious, well-researched, and entirely achievable. By the end, Dad's expression had shifted, no longer protective, but professional respect. When did you get smarter than me? He asked. I didn't. I became differently smart than you expected, I replied. He gathered papers again, more thoughtfully this time. The upcoming board meeting would be fascinating. And the Meridian decision? I closed my laptop. We'd evaluate all options objectively, prioritizing all stakeholders, especially the 237 employees on the factory floor. Walking to the parking garage, I reflected on the day. 6 years of careful planning had culminated in a moment that changed everything without seeming to. I was still Catherine Thompson, still committed to the company's success, still respecting Dad's expertise, but no longer the quiet administrative assistant. I was the majority owner, ready to prove that women could excel in manufacturing when given the opportunity. Sometimes, the smartest strategy is patience. Other times, it's simply refusing to accept someone else's limits on your potential. The next board meeting was going to be very different indeed. And if you want to see more stories like this and insights on leadership, strategy, and growth, don't forget to subscribe to my channel.